Behind every great blank, there is a blank. How would you fill in those blanks? We're going to talk about this statement today. And if you stick with me in this video, I'm going to challenge some of the ways that we actually approach this blank type of statement. But before I continue, this video has been brought to you by my son's fashion brand, streetwear brand called False Self, which is all about upcycling and cool things. I happen to be the artist, so I'm wearing the gear right now. This is the reason I'm wearing kind of this funky hoodie. And it's all part of teaching my son how to be an entrepreneur and be a part of the EQ economy. Back to this statement. Behind every great blank, there is a blank. Well, let's look at some of the ways that this statement has been used. Behind every great man is a woman rolling her eyes. Okay. I definitely agree. That is me and my wife most of the time. Behind every great man, there is a surprise woman. Yeah, okay. I'm going to chalk up that one there. Our marriage, we definitely experienced this. Behind every great man is a woman telling him he's not so hot. Nah, not not so much in my marriage. I've been going on getting married, being married for 19 years. This February, this month is our 19-year anniversary. So I can definitely relate to these statements, but not so much this one, telling him he's not so hot. My wife tells me I'm hot all the time. All right. I'm kidding, of course. Anyways, or am I? Let's continue. Behind every successful man is a woman. Behind her is his wife. Ouch. Now, that's supposed to be said facetiously by Groucho Marx, I'm sure, as part of comedy, but quite often it is the case. Behind every great man is a good brother. Now, that's an interesting take as well. It's not about the woman being behind the man, but another man, either a biological brother, a sibling, or another man who acts like a brother. And I can definitely agree that behind every great man, or behind great men in general, there are brothers. And that is part of becoming great as far as a man is concerned. Behind every great man is not a woman. She is beside him. She is with him, not behind him. This is an interesting quote, and it's going to go to what I'd like to talk about. Is that I'm watching a lot of content, comments, and I've been having discussions in terms of what seems to be this gender war in our culture war right now, and in our outrage online culture where we're in these echo chambers. It's very easy to make it about one gender versus the other gender, and then get all the props, and as we're part of the prestige economy online, to look prestigious and say, yay, our echo chamber is celebrating how we're saying, behind every great man is even a greater woman type thing. But I wonder to myself, when are we actually going to celebrate men and women working together, men and women, or all genders, any gender, not just male and female, working together side by side? Yet online, it seems to be this polarizing discussion that happens. And I'd like to just jump right into it. So behind every great, as we talked about, man, there is a great woman or a greater woman. Well, the question is, how did it get like that? That's an interesting question to ask. So behind every great man, there's a woman. Is she behind the man because she's been oppressed and subjugated by the patriarchy? That does happen. I can admit, I've seen it. I've been a part of systems that do that. And it could be cultural all around the world. There are different systems that happen. So maybe it's not that way. Maybe it's just a choice, or maybe it's always been accepted. That's the way it happens in culture. Or what about behind every great man, there is a great woman who decided that she wanted to be in the background, that she wanted to be behind the man. I don't need the spotlight, and I'm going to work behind the scenes and make this man great because I don't need to be in the front. In fact, I'm choosing not to be. What does society or culture say about those women? I can tell you that a lot of these types of women don't want to speak out in today's culture, don't want to talk about, hey, I'm happy with this role. I'm happy being behind the man. Let's reverse it for a second. Behind every great woman, there is a great man. What happens if I said that? What happens if I said behind every great woman, there is a great man who decides to empower that woman? Behind every great woman, there is a man who decided to get out of his own way and say, you know what, it's better if I go behind the scenes. What about behind every great woman, there's a man who completely flopped and failed, and the woman stepped up, and they both agreed. I can tell you that's the case in my household. There's been many times that I have failed in my family, and my wife has had to step up. When I've been down, she's been up, and she has stepped into that leadership role, and I've chosen to be behind her. I had the conversation with her the other day where I said, you know, I'm going to completely let you make that decision and lead our family that way, because I've seen you operate in such a way that you're not going to make the wrong decision. In fact, your decisions have always ended up better than mine. And so what happens if it's the man who says, you know, I've accepted that I have come short, I'm falling short, I'm a failure, and therefore I'm going to allow the woman to lead. Now we're talking about male and female, but this could apply to any type of dynamic between two classes, types of people, groups, etc., identities, if you will. And so I want to address that there's a lot of attack out there saying that men resist change. Well, making it about gender, I think, is pretty reductive and eliminates the thousands of nuances that go into situations like this. I like to say it is not gender that resists change. It's the power dynamic within systems that always resist the change. Now, if that system is incentivized in a certain way, it just so happens that men typically have the power, absolutely, men are going to resist change. But I can say the exact same thing about women or any gender resisting change when there's power involved. It's not just between men or women. It happens to be about the system in which that power is exercised, controlled, or maintained, protected, which is the reason that system is going to resist change, because all systems fundamentally want to keep the system going. Same thing between parents and children. Parents will resist change because of power dynamics, because they are the parent. What happens if a parent has to change? Because the child needs a different environment to change. It's all about the power dynamics. It's about the systems. So it's not gender. And like I said, I think we have to be very careful with going out and making one gender look bad so the other gender can look good. And that's what I see quite often happening with online rhetoric and making decisions based on online rhetoric and outrage online. It's just a really bad idea. Let's talk about how we can possibly address this. Instead of change, let's talk about transformation. I'm wearing my son's clothing brand right now, and I could change my clothes. I could take off this hoodie and put on a suit, and that's change from the outside. And that's where a lot of people want to focus, is change that they can see. Whereas transformation happens from the inside out and automatically creates permanent change. So for transformation to occur, which is the change that we want to start by agreeing on where we disagree. So if you're on the polar opposite of me and we disagree on something, how about we, instead of throwing rocks at each other and saying, you need to agree with my point of view, how about let's spend time agreeing where we disagree? Let's define what power dynamics, let's define what patriarchy means, let's define what equality, equity means. Let's have that conversation, and then let's accept each other that we're going to agree where we disagree. Then we can empathize versus polarize. Instead of me going on attacking you and making a caricature of you, saying, oh, you're this and you're that, and hey, everybody, you don't want to get into this argument here with this person because they're a bad faith actor, and et cetera, et cetera. You are this person. If I automatically put you in a box, caricature you because of the color of your skin or your gender or your economic class, I am polarizing instead of empathizing. So if we've agreed to where we can disagree, we can come together and I can say, let me take a moment to attempt to empathize with you and how you got to that situation and the emotions, the perspectives, what you experience on the other side of the aisle with me, if you will. And then work to change the incentive system, not necessarily the other person. There are trade-offs that have to occur. If we can change the incentive system, those trade-offs will benefit everybody. And each party will say, I'm willing to compromise, or I'm willing to have trade-offs because the system is incentivized for me to do so. Hey, that's where I think transformation happens. It's all about the system. I'd like to explore that just a little bit as I speak and train with executive coaches in emotional intelligence, as well as the organization development consultants that we work with. All this requires emotional intelligence, to empathize, to be regulated enough, to be able to agree where we disagree, to work on the system versus work from a personal emotional standpoint requires emotional intelligence. I want to point out that I'm a part of a group, a society called the International Society of Organization Development and Change, the ISODC. And they have a code of ethics that we agree to when we become part of the International Society for Organization Development and Change. We work in organization development and we look at change. And I want to point out some of their ethics. Now, they've got a multiple codes of ethics there. And I'm just going to read out a few, and I'm going to point out some highlights that I think might help us with this systemic transformation. So one of them is justice, that people live lives whose results are fair and right for everyone. I agree. We want justice for everyone. I don't think anybody's going to argue with justice. It's not the what that's the issue. It's the how we get there. Dignity, integrity, worth, and fundamental rights of individuals, organizations, communities, societies, and other human systems. That emphasis is mine. Other human systems. I think that very few would argue that every individual, organization, community, society deserves dignity, integrity, worth, and fundamental rights. But other human systems, what does it mean to respect the dignity, integrity, worth, and fundamental rights of other human systems? This is very interesting. I've been in situations where I've gone to another country, third world country, to work in some type of social project or relief, humanitarian, compassionate relief. And I've been warned that I would see things, systemic things that I'm going to disagree with. But it is not my place to judge that. It is my place to just go and rescue lives. It's fascinating what I've been able to observe. And even more interesting is the training that these very versed and experienced individuals put me through, knowing the different types of reactions that I might have. Let's talk about this human systems component. An all-win attitude and cooperation, that people care about one another and about working together to achieve results that work for everyone individually and collectively. So we talk about a win-win. Well, what does the all-win look like? Because I often see people claim that in order for us to get justice, someone has to lose. Now, I'm not saying that someone doesn't have to change. I'm not saying that one party doesn't have to compromise and make trade-offs. But what if the system was incentivized to make those trade-offs because we adopted an all-win attitude and we cooperated together instead of one party being fearful that their rights are going to be infringed upon or things will be taken away? It's an interesting proposition to explore. Holistic, systemic view, my emphasis, and stakeholder orientation, understanding human behavior. This is what I love about the ISODC, and I love about the field of organization development and what I do as an executive coach, because understanding human behavior is the key to transforming systems. That if we do one thing, then people are automatically, naturally going to react because they're humans. And so it's human to make something bad so that we can look good. It's human. But it's also human to punch back, to oppose that which makes us feel bad. It's human to polarize. It's human to be binary and make something black or white or good and bad. It's human behavior. It's been ingrained in us. There's been evolutionary psychology and biology and studies that have shown that people just operate a certain way. And it's not just about the social constructs. Very important to understand social constructs, but we have human behavior that's ingrained into us that responds to social constructs, responds to systems and societies and communities and all the different mechanics and frameworks that we are exposed to. So let's take a holistic, systemic view of stakeholder orientation. So not just who is experiencing the injustice or who is, let's say, oppressed or not having equal opportunity. And let's look at all the stakeholders involved and see how it got there. From the perspective of whole systems that influence and are influenced by that behavior, recognizing the interests that different people have in the system's results and valuing those interests fairly and justly. Ooh. Everybody has different interests in a system and valuing those interests fairly and justly. It's a holistic perspective. And I wonder if we approached these same issues of inequality, oppression, injustice, social justice issues with these code of ethics, how much further could we go along versus the system being incentivized for polarization? The more we can make somebody look bad, we look good, and then we build our tribe. We have this tribe online where we get together. They call them mimetic tribes that say we believe in this, and therefore everybody who doesn't believe in us or believe in what we do or doesn't fall in line are bad, and therefore we're going to go to war. Well, it's really easy to develop a social media following and be rewarded and feel really great about doing that. It's a lot harder to say, you know what, I'm going to go into the middle and be open, use my emotional intelligence and listen and maybe change my mind. That's not rewarded very much today. In fact, you can get ostracized by your own tribe to do so. So behind every great blank, there is a system. I'm asking the question, what's the system that can make everything in front of it great? So what if we could create these new systems? And this is part of our journey into the EQ economy, building an economy based on emotional intelligence, a system that respects people and empathizes with them. I wonder if we took more of that type of approach, how much further, as I said before, could we have gotten up to this point in time? Thanks for listening. I hope this has been a great point of entry for discussion. I look forward to having more discussions with you. Please feel free to like us on social media, follow wherever you're looking, and follow this hashtag EQ economy. We got lots more to share. I will see you in the next video.